Oi oi, it's your boy, the Manel Cap of fights that are crap, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you following UFC Kape versus Almabayev. We probably ain't going long today, folks. It's a good thing I'm not paid by the minute or the hour, because not an awful lot to talk about. Wasn't looking like a strong card coming in, but I was, I'm always ready to be surprised by the cards that don't have any names on, being the cards that are bangers. However, this was largely not. Last week we got something like 7 knockouts in 10 fights. This week we got 4 finishes in 10 fights, 40% finish rate, similar to Clay Guida. And in addition to that, it was another Manel Cap fucky finish. I got the finish, but did I really? Because I cheated. Sort of performance. Back to back with last week's Henry Cejudo, Song Yadong. Song Yadong poked him in the eye. They broke for 5 minutes for Henry Cejudo's a lot of time. There was a load of asking around because they wanted to do, Jason Herzog wanted to do the majority of the rounds, not realizing that they already had done the majority of the rounds, so they could do the technical decision. And then Song Yadong came out with his fingers pointed straight at Henry Cejudo's eyes in a fight style he'd never used before that point. And then I had people commenting going, I think you should give him the benefit of the doubt. And it's like, bro, you're the problem. You're the reason that no one ever gets a point ducked. Because everyone goes, well, it might not have been deliberate. It's like, it doesn't matter. If it's deliberate, it's a foul. Take a point immediately. And I understand that refs on big fights, if you ever see, like, cheating in a big fight, say, Khabib versus McGregor, there's been a couple lately, but I can't remember off the top of my head, but where the refs, you're there going, Herb Dean, what the hell are you doing? And to be fair, Herb Dean is completely washed at this point, but sometimes it'll be a better referee like Jason Herzog, and you'll say, what the hell are you doing? And a lot of the time it's because the referee doesn't want to get involved in a big fight, partly due to being fight fans themselves, partly due to the fact that being paid a couple of $1,000s isn't worth being murdered by various gambling interests, or just wild fans. But if you want to make a change, these cards that no one sees in the bum-ass apex are the ones that you should be taking a point on right away. But nope, inept refs everywhere. Mike Beltran let like 4 eye rakes happen in this fight. I think it was let down by the review team in the first one because the people from outside the cage were going, no, it was clean. But I bet if you show him the replay of this fight, to be fair, Jason Herzog last week, Henry Cejudo got him on his podcast and said, I think that we should have done this and you didn't take a point and blah, blah, blah. And Herzog said, I think I was mistaken not taking the point and I think I should have. You will never get that from Herb Dean. Herb Dean is still adamant that he made the right decision on that Jai Herbert almost murder that got Dan Hardy fired. Herb Dean was like, well, I understand, but shouting at me after the fight is not the time to do it. There's a time to discuss that, and then that time never came. He never discussed that stoppage again. He always just said that he was right. At least Herzog will come out and say, look, I shouldn't have let Anthony Smith get beaten almost to death by Glover Teixeira for 25 minutes. But I imagine Mike Beltran is off the build where if you show him the footage of the eye pokes happening in this finish, he'll say, I don't need to see it, I've got my own recollection of the fight. And then he'll say, that's not how I recalled it. Which is why being a cop is the best base for being an MMA ref. But yes, kind of disappointing because Manel Cap actually came to fight this time, which a lot of the time he doesn't. And he was looking decent, doing his usual things, standing southpaw, left straights, step through left straights, level changes into left knees and left kicks. It was nice. And then he caught Almabayev in a sort of flappy exchange along the fence. He raked his eye, which, if you don't know, it's throwing an open hand strike and then letting your hand just sort of rake across their face so that your fingers go in their eye. Not quite the same as the regular hold your hand out with splayed fingers and hope they run onto it. You could forgive the first time it happened, but then go back and watch the finish. It's embarrassing. He reaches out, rakes him once, throws his right hand open as a rake, brushes it down Almabayev's face and makes sure that the fingers go in the eyes, and then he throws a couple punches after that. And Almabayev goes, oh, I've been poked. And then the stoppage was like while Almabayev was on a takedown. Absolutely bizarre stuff. Sadly, this moves Manel Cap into like title contention. But honestly, they should have got rid of Kape and kept Marquez. But Pantoja's done him once already. I imagine he'll do him again. Almabayev was having great success when he kicked, because that's what Pantoja did, just circled and kicked at the legs and body. of Kape. Kape was doing a lot of level changing to dissuade Almabayev from shooting takedowns, because Almabayev is like 5'3". If you change level, it's easier to stuff his takedowns. And then Almabayev actually had success in, I think it was the third round or the second round, by throwing up body kicks, or they would have been high kicks if Kape was level changing. Always the answer to the guy level changing. Throw knees and kicks and make him think, oh, I might level change onto that. Great example I always use from MMA is Ross Pearson had the best head movement in MMA. Lovely slip and counter left hook. The guys who shut that down just threw kicks at him. Through body kicks and knees, he stood upright, and then suddenly all that slipping and head movement doesn't exist anymore. Because he's choosing not to do it. So that was your main event, and that was about the most interesting thing that happened on the card. Co-main event was Cody Brundage versus Julian Marquez. I pointed this out on the Boycast, but this is one of the all-time worst co-mains in terms of, like, things that matter happening on a card. If you just want to see, like, fights that matter between good fighters at the height of their craft, this is the absolute opposite of that, because Cody Brundage was on a 7-fight run where he had one legit win and a no contest and a DQ win by getting hit in the back of the head. And in the one that he won from Malkoun, where he got elbowed in the back of the head, he was having his ass kicked by Malkoun. So basically 7 fights, 1 win for Brundage. Meanwhile, Julian Marquez hadn't won a fight since 2021. And that was against washed Sam Alvey, who himself was on a 6-fight losing streak. So this was always going to be sloppy as shit. But it was fun sloppy, and Cody Brundage managed to get almost knocked out. Both of them lost their mouthpieces. The ref very generously waited a while to see how the exchange was playing out, because they were both mouth open, swinging wild. Stepped in, gave them their mouthpieces back. There was speculation over whether he gave them the wrong gum shield each, but then they came back in and Brundage knocked him out. And it was interesting because it was like Brundage had been on the fence covering up the whole time and swinging back. And then the moment that the referee broke them and gave them their mouthpieces back, he came out swinging and knocked Marquez down. You could be upset about it if you're Marquez. You probably don't care about it if you're anyone else. It was sloppy-ass fun. And there was some interesting discussion around this week because the UFC, in a desperate attempt to hype this fight, put out a graphic saying Julian Marquez is one of just 79 fighters in the UFC to have wins by 3 different submissions. So that made everyone laugh for just 79. But then the boy Chase Hooper, who was in the running for most improved fighter for me last year, or technical turnaround, said this proves my point about how much lower the level of jiu-jitsu is in MMA than in any other discipline. There's been 3,022 UFC athletes, according to UFC.com, so only 2.6% of the athletes in UFC history have 3 or more different subs in the promotion. And I pointed out, BJ Penn was one of the greatest grapplers to ever compete in MMA, and certainly at the time, and he had 1 submission type in the UFC. He had a lot of rear naked chokes because he dominated people. And when he was on the bottom, he swept or got up and then got on top and dominated them. The idea that doing some fucky ankle lock from the bottom, hitting a Kyotera ankle lock from the bottom De La Riva makes you a better grappler than BJ Penn, I'm not buying it. Fair play to Chase Hooper, he is right in some regards, because this is like when I get mad about people going on about the best boxing in MMA, saying like, oh, Nick Diaz had the best boxing in MMA, and going, he had no footwork. I consider that a part of boxing. Or JDS, he had no ring craft, constantly backed himself onto the fence. There's a lot of elements that make up jiu-jitsu, and there's a lot of elements that make up boxing. I just think it's not a great way to look at who's the best grappler. Oh, he's got lots of different types of submissions? Yeah. But an interesting discussion to be had nonetheless. Nasrat Haqparast versus Despaigne Ribovics. Ribovics, non-stop fun fights. I think this did get a fight of the night, which is a shame because I thought Amil versus Gomis was actually surprisingly fun. And that's going to be the only time Gomis whiffs a fight of the night bonus, I imagine, with the way that he normally fights. But Haqparast versus Ribovics, I just want to say well done to Nasrat Haqparast. He's been working at TriStar forever, and TriStar gets a lot of guff from people online for never producing another George St. Pierre, and for all their fighters just becoming like conservative jab merchants. But Haqparast was a sloppy overhand merchant for a long time. Southpaw jab overhand, and when he threw the overhand, he would bend forward at the waist to make almost a right angle, and then he wouldn't be able to follow up the overhand because it's very hard to follow up when you're bent over at the waist. This fight, you'll notice, he threw a ton of different punches for a start. In fact, if you look at his stats in the UFC, if you go fight metric, his output has gone massively up since his early days in the UFC, like over the last sort of 3 years. And you'll notice this, and this aligns with him improving his boxing. His output has gone way up because he stays on top of his feet. His head is never, or at least not as often, coming so far forward that he can't follow up. He can throw jab, left hand, and then follow up with his right hand, or jab, left hand, and move. And it's all to do with not leaning forward. He used to be jab, overhand, can't follow up. Jab, overhand, can't follow up. And it made him very predictable. And in this fight, he was up and down with body shots, head shots, kicks, all sorts of stuff. He looked fantastic. Ribovics is tough as hell and was coming back the whole time. It was a good, fun fight, but mainly compare this Nasrat Haqparast to, say, the one who fought Bobby Green or some time back then. He's improved so much. It's crazy because he's been in the UFC for about 10 years and he's only really fixed that flaw in the last 2, and it's made him so much better. Amil versus William Gomis. Gomis' most fun fight by a long way. He tends to stand with his back foot on the fence and circle around the cage and then land the odd good counterpunch and slip out the side door, which is crafty but can make for some boring fights. Amil came in here and just pushed him constantly. So Gomis was constantly being fed the opportunity to counter, or if he didn't counter, he was getting hit. So that was really fun. And then the clinch work was really good because Amil had some fun looks there, but Gomis actually is very good at stopping people taking him down. And when he gets taken down, he gets up really well. I think Amil, he kind of let himself down by not getting to the body earlier. If you saw Gomis's, if you watched the fight, but if you look at Gomis's strike stats, he was up and down the body constantly. Low kicks, knees to the body, knees to the head. He was looking for everything, but he fired up and down. Did some good attrition work. Whereas Amil, basically for the first 2 rounds, he's headhunting. And then in the 3rd round, he starts throwing his right straight to the body. And that's when Gomis is already starting to tire. And you're just thinking, how much easier would this have been on you if you'd started throwing that right hand to the body instead of to the head earlier? And Gomis would be a puddle on the floor by the 3rd round. Because he tired him out mostly with just being in his face. I love how well prepared he was for the left kick, because that's Gomis's bread and butter. Gomis comes out, throws the left kick immediately. Haider takes it on his right forearm, scoops underneath it with his left hand. The Saenchai catch. If you go watch Saenchai, the Muay Thai legend, one of the all-time greats, he got everyone with this. You don't typically want to catch kicks on one arm, because if they're a really hard kicker, you might break your arm. But Saenchai would choose when to catch these kicks on one arm. He wasn't doing it every single time, but he'd take it on one arm, scoop underneath with the other hand, and then step back and pull the kick in front of him, step through, kick out their back leg, throw a high kick, whatever, but he always got them at a disadvantage off their kick because he caught it and threw it across his body. Amil here catches it in that Saenchai catch, drops it down to a single leg position, and then pulls it up the other side in front of his body, and then he's kicking out Gomis's back leg into what is good finishing position on a single leg in wrestling. And he hit that catch a number of times and was able to turn defense immediately into offense, which is a huge deal. Every time someone kicks at you in MMA, unless they're an amazing wrestler and you don't want to get tied up in it at all, you should be using that as a window of opportunity to change the momentum and get on offense and make them defend. If I'm watching a fight and I see a guy get away with like 2 or 3 body kicks, even if they're just landing on the arm, if I watch him get away with them for free, I think that's not going to change for the entire fight. And normally, it doesn't. What I did like from Gomis was the spinning back elbows and back fist. I've laughed about people using the back fist as a get out of jail card before, but it is a good get out of jail card. If you miss a kick and the guy moves in on you while your leg is completely out of the way, coming back onto stance is going to be a lot of work, and you're going to get hit while you're doing it. Spinning through on the back fist is not a ton of work, and if the guy's barreling in to take advantage of you being out of position, he's wide open for it. So you've seen loads of guys get dropped or knocked out off little back fists and back elbows off missed kicks. But if your back is along the fence, spinning techniques are really nice, because if you're jogging around the cage and the guy's trying to cut you off and step in on you, you can step across yourself and go straight into the back fist. Emmanuel Newton is a great example of this. He did this tons against Joey Beltran and knocked him out with it. You can flow nicely into the cross step when you're circling on the cage like that. But also back elbows. Back elbows are best used when people are closing in on you. So the best times to use them are when the opponent's on the fence because he can't run. So when you move in, he's stuck, or he's going to circle out one way or the other, but he's got nothing behind him that he can retreat into. Or when you are on the fence because you know the opponent's going to attack you because you're on the fence, for reasons I just stated. So this was a really good fight. I would say this was probably my favourite fight on the card, and I recommend you check it out. Sam Patterson knocked out Danny Barlow. I mean, it wasn't a very long fight and not an awful lot you could pick up on. Sam Patterson basically just got cornered against the fence multiple times, and then Barlow kept opening up as the southpaw with a jab overhand, big overhand left, and Patterson covered up and threw a short straight right hand back, almost blind, but because Barlow was just there for it. We always talk about how cutting the ring and using the cage is about using your presence, and how that does make you more defensively porous. It makes you more available. You're using your presence to take up space, but that also means you're not going to be as hard to hit. So it's a playoff of being aggressive. The guy is going to come back with straight punches down the centre, and you have to be looking for them. Otherwise, you get dinged on the chin and you're just out. Mario Pinto knocked out Austin Lane. Both these guys, fair play to them for not being fat slobs in the UFC heavyweight division, but Austin Lane is one of the chinniest men alive. Maybe he's not chinny, but if you're fighting 265-pound dudes, you have to be able to take an abnormal shot to do well. Mario Pinto basically sat on the back foot chilling for most of this fight. I like what he did, and when he decided it was time to go in the second round, he faked a jab and then he faked a right hand, and he used it to double shuffle in on Lane and push him towards the fence and started putting him under pressure. Hit him with an overhand just out in the open, and it was really it's kind of like all Austin Lane knockouts. He gets knocked out because he's just we've established our rhythm and now we're basically sparring, and then he gets hit on the chin and goes down in the most horrible fashion. He's 6'6", 6'7". Every time he falls stiff as a board and hits the back of his head on the floor. Massive athletic dude, but chinny as hell. And hittable too, which is never good. If he does want to make a go of it in MMA, more clinch. Just abuse the clinch. Be big and strong. Work to the clinch every time. Beat people up with knees along the fence. By all means, make it boring. But, he used the clinch decently against Robelis Despaigne. This is a reminder, because Robelis Despaigne this weekend knocked out some absolute nobody in Karate Combat. If you watch Karate Combat, you're a degenerate anyway. It's bad combat sports. But Robelis Despaigne has done 3 guys in a row in 4 seconds there. And I'm watching people on Reddit go, well, his wrestling let him down in MMA. He is a phenomenal striker, though. And you're like, he's not a phenomenal striker. I wish Glory had picked him up for their 32-man heavyweight tournament that they're doing next month, which is full of schlubs, by the way. There's lots of schlubs in there, because there aren't 32 good heavyweights in the world in kickboxing, but they should have got some schlubby MMA fighters in there who had names. Robelis Despaigne would get chopped down in 2 rounds by some fat dude you'd never heard of. But yes, Despaigne got worked by Austin Lane after losing to Waldo Ocasio-Cortez, or whatever his name is, and then kicked out of the UFC, and then Karate Combat were like, you're a big freak who likes to swing punches. It's hilarious that he is from a taekwondo. He's an Olympic medalist in taekwondo, which is a sport where you play tag with your feet. And dude's like, oh, he's probably a great kicker. And Despaigne is doing interviews where he's like, I rate myself the best kicker in MMA. Never. He threw one kick and got sort of pushed over off it. Not even taken down, just stumbled in his UFC career. I don't know. To me, there's kicking to hurt people and make use of it in MMA, and then there's kicking the kind where you use your toes to take a cigarette out of someone's mouth for a demonstration or an Instagram reel. And that's what Robelis Despaigne is gold medalist in. Speaking of dumbass kicks, Ricardo Ramos, my boy, 2 rounds down, comes out and goes, I'm going to do my Rabona kick, which is the one where you step across and kick behind your own leg. In football, where you're hitting a football, cool move. In MMA, almost zero practical application. And I always moan about Ricardo Ramos because during the pandemic, he had 6 months not fighting, and he came out against, I think it was Lerone Murphy, so a really good fighter, and just threw the Rabona kick 25 times. He just threw this kick that does nothing 25 times and then got knocked out. And then other times, Ricardo Ramos turns up and looks great, boxing into duck unders against Bill Algeo and taking his back, hitting beautiful inside trips. He's obsessed with spinning back elbows, but he's actually pretty good at them. But yeah, he fought Kape Mariscal, and Mariscal did the Kape Mariscal thing. He just walked him down. What I love about this dude, his judo in the clinch. We don't see enough great judo fighters, but when you do see a great judo fighter, sometimes they can't do shit with it. So, Hidehiko Yoshida, gold medalist in judo, the Japanese judo sensation, hit maybe 2 good clinch takedowns in his MMA career, and the rest were like double legs. Satoshi Ishii, gold medalist in judo, got off the mats from winning the gold medal. They said, what do you want to do next? He said, instead of doing another 4 years and waiting for another gold medal, he said, I want to fight Fedor Emelianenko in MMA. Had a full MMA career, hit maybe 2 good throws in that whole career. And dudes who train with him in grappling come out and say, oh, he's got the best throws in the gym, he's got the best throws in the training room. But guys just can't make it work in MMA, some guys. Kape Mariscal actually throwing people pretty well. He does, I think it's the Tayatoshi, which, again, all my judo is learned from people who've taught me judo for grappling. Never taken a serious judo class, but Tayatoshi is where you step. So when you're turning your back to do those back turning throws, where you step through all the way to put your foot in front of their far foot, and then you throw them over the top, is the body drop, I believe. And John Danaher has gone on record saying like it's the most dangerous takedown for him in terms of injuring yourself because you can drop them on your own knee. I think that's only when you do it from the back or something. But Mariscal is great at the Tayatoshi. He hit a couple in this fight. Tabitha Ricci hit a really good one a few fights ago, which you're never going to look up, so I don't know why I bothered saying that, but it's a really cool throw when you see it done well. And Ricardo Ramos tried to do one from the overhook in this fight and failed because Kape Mariscal's got the judo lineage and the back made of flexible steel. But it was very cool because if you fail one of those forward throws from the overhook, you normally fall to your knees and the opponent will either be standing or on his knees with you. And you do have room to roll through on a leg or sometimes go over the back and attack an armbar. But Ramos went through on a leg for this one and got in on a calf slicer, chased him up to the feet on a single leg. What I really liked from Kape Mariscal in this fight, the idea of the palm strike gets a bit romanticized by traditional martial arts people, but if you're wearing a big padded glove and you've got about 6 inches to throw something in, it's not going to do much, and often the glove gets in the way. If you open your hand and bend it back and you hit them with the heel of your palm, or if you're going to the ear, you slap them with the full surface of your hand, those are often more effective than short punches. So Ramos was on a single on Mariscal, had him on one leg, and Mariscal just slaps him in the ear. And I made a slow motion gif of this because I wanted to see it as many times as possible in repetition. But Ramos has a good single leg and he lets go to cover up. And Mariscal just whips his leg free. And he got it by just slapping him in the ear. And his hand only covers 6 to 8 inches to do it. And then later in the clinch, he's in a clinch and he just leans back and smacks him with the heel of his palm. And Ramos goes, ah! And then Kape Mariscal changes to a body lock and starts trying to throw him. Mariscal's so much fun, and it's really great that he's got the cool judo, but mainly it's that he doesn't stop. He just keeps walking people down. Which could put him in danger against Ramos, because Ramos loves the spinning elbow, but he ducked most of them, even one of the ones that the commentary team thought connected, because he ducked out of the way of it by accident, and then stayed down for a moment before coming up. But in the last round, Ramos entered with a left elbow, which is a technique that you have to step so far that it's not good to do it against people who are going to just step back. You really want to do it when their back's to the fence or when you know that they're going to step in. Shinya Aoki versus Eddie Alvarez 2 is a great example of this. Aoki, for some reason, he'd been training with some Muay Thai guys and he convinced himself that he'd do well with an elbow. He steps for this lead elbow, and he misses completely, and Eddie Alvarez just cracks him with a counter right hand and drops him. Because it's a big committed move and you have to step so far and the target limb or weapon is so short. But Ramos stepped with it, put his feet on the line, missed, and as Kape Mariscal stepped back in, he spun for the back elbow, and that one actually worked, which was very cool. Ramos is forever going to be a fun guy until he starts losing 3 in a row, but he's a really fun guy to have around. And Kape Mariscal, man, who knows how far this guy can get, because he's got good technique, and also he's an absolute dog. Anything else good on this card? Oh, Ramazan Temirov beat Charles Johnson in the first fight on the card. This was bizarre. Charles Johnson, I believe, is ranked. He's coming off the best win of his career against Joshua Van. And then he beat Sumidegi after that. But his win over Joshua Van should have been like, right, get this guy moving into title contention or towards title contention through the contenders. Because we all reckon Joshua Van's going to be something special too. But instead he's fighting an unranked guy who's dangerous on the first fight of the night on some unwatched Apex card. I said, I don't know if the UFC hates him or if his management are dumb as hell. But this is exactly what I suspected could happen. You know, he's fighting a really dangerous opponent in a loss. Now he loses and no one sees it. And also it was to do with Charles Johnson just not getting started because that's Charles Johnson's MO. His first rounds are always terrible. His third rounds are always really good. And every time you come out of the fight going, why didn't he get going a bit sooner? But Temirov looked great. For a guy who's, I think he's 5'4", maybe? Yeah, he's 5'4". For a guy who's 5'4" with a 63-inch reach, you know, flyweight, we are talking about the flyweight division, so it's the shortest people possible or the smallest people possible. But he's short even in that division. And he's doing really well getting in on people. He got in off a couple of parried kicks in this fight. He got in off a couple of slip punches. He was doing really good work. And he hit a nice takedown at one point in the third too. But the main interesting thing from this fight was that John Anik gave us some Anik trivia, which was Charles Johnson was a 4-sport All-American athlete in high school. I checked where he was from. I think he's from Kansas. But in Illinois, I know that you can only be a 4-sport All-American athlete because of Ken Norton, the great Ken Norton. Beat Muhammad Ali once, probably beat him twice, depending on how you scored it. But they called him Black Hercules. If you see photos of him in his prime, or even as a kid, you can see why. He entered and won 8 track and field events in high school at state level. And Illinois made a rule called the Ken Norton rule, which was like, you can only compete in 4 events, Ken, max. So you want to talk about participation trophy America? The schools were like, come on, Ken, let some other people win some medals. Which at that point is a participation trophy. 1960 Illinois was woke, is what I'm saying. I'm sure Ken Norton, who grew up black in the 1960s, is probably rolling in his grave with me joking about that. But he also was Mandingo in the original film, Mandingo, the 70s blaxploitation film. For any 70s film heads who are in. So that's your homework for this week. Go watch some Ken Norton fights. Legend. Broke Ali's jaw and fought from a cool-ass crab stance. There was some boxing. I love Subriel Matias, so it was great to watch him get back on track. I don't know if he looked as great as I have seen him look, but, I've liked him for a while. Really great infighting, great combination punching on the inside. And Gervonta Davis scored a controversial decision where he did take a knee at one point, and that is a knockdown. It has been since the London prize ring rules, where there were unlimited rounds, so rounds ended when you took a knee or got knocked down. So guys would take a breather by coming out and immediately taking a knee, and everyone would go, boo, bitch, get up. But we'll talk about those on the Boycast. Yeah, this week was not great UFC-wise. Next week we've got Poatan versus Ankalaev. I have a Filthy Casuals guide to Alex Pereira coming this week. Look out for it on the YouTube channel. Share it with all your friends. Be really obnoxious about it. Like, hold your phone in their face. Because I haven't done a Filthy Casuals guide in a while, and I really want to do one that actually does numbers, like the Aldo one, which I think has got like 800,000 viewers now. But then I pour my heart and soul into another one that I'm like, look at this cool thing a fighter does, and it gets, 20,000 hits or whatever. So help me out, blood. It's the least you can do. Anyway, I'm your boy Jack Slack. Sign up to the Patreon. Watch the YouTube. Read my articles at fightprimer.com. Oh my god, deduct some points for these eye pokes. Bless.